Hello, and it's time for the Raw review here on Wrestling with Regret, back in the pre-taped format for the time being. I'm taking a small break from the live format, and we'll see where things ultimately end up with that. Let me know what you've been thinking of the live reviews compared to the pre-tapes in the comment section below, and that might help determine the future of what kind of format at least the Raw review is going to be in. But for now, let's begin. The show begins with a contract signing between Seth Rollins and Dominik Mysterio. Samoa Joe's presiding over it, and after what happened last week where he stood up to Seth, he has promised to keep things professional in front of Rollins. Dominik comes out with a kendo stick and his own music and Titantron. I was really hoping we get some kind of David Flair tribute where it's like, it's a shot of Dominik posing, a shot of disappointed Rey Mysterio, and then his name, and there's a loop, and that's it. I was hoping that was all the effort they could put into it. They put in like about the same amount of effort though in terms of visually what they had to offer with Dominik Mysterio. Anyway, the whole thing begins with Joe cutting a promo on Seth Rollins, who, by the way, Joe is not fighting at SummerSlam. He is not a participant in this matchup. It is clear to me they are planting some seeds, or it seems to be. Maybe it's not clear, but I'm guessing they're planting the seeds from some eventual confrontation when Joe inevitably comes back into competing. Maybe that's the vibe I got from that interaction there. Seth defends himself again, saying, I had no choice. I've given the Mysterios a choice every step of the way, but they've taken the wrong choice. The fans made me do this because I tried to burn it down and be, Monday Night Raw and stuff, but the fans crapped on me, so now that's why I'm evil. And we've heard that kind of line from Seth before. His delivery is no less great in this promo here. It's just a story we've heard before. Dominik finally speaks up, and at that point I finally realize there's a little cut in the neck of his t-shirt, which tells me, oh, that's gonna get ripped off in this segment. Because then Dominik basically says, because he's signing not just a contract for the match, but also signing a contract to become a WWE superstar. And Rollins says, it's because of me that, you're even doing this right now. This is your dream. And Dominik goes, well, my dream now is to kick your ass at SummerSlam. Rollins also tells Dominik to use the kendo stick as well as anything else he possibly can at his disposal at SummerSlam because he wants no excuses for when he finally beats Dominik. They sign the contracts, everything's hunky-dory, and then Seth tells Dominik to leave the ring for their next match with Seth and Humberto Carrillo. It's a pretty short matchup here. In the end, Murphy gets on the apron to distract, but Dominik dinks him in the back with the kendo stick. Still, Rollins is able to win by, putting the knees up on Humberto's splash and hits the stomp to win the whole thing. After the match, Dominik gets jumped, and the numbers game is too much for him, and then they start they beat the bejesus out of Dominik with the kendo sticks. Seth and Murphy both. And sure enough, the shirt comes off. They tie him into the ropes. They just beat him mercilessly, front to back. The welts are just enormous. And they're really giving this kid the business. And then after a very violent display, it's finally all over. Seth looks like a proper evil bastard the way he's doing this here and yelling and talking to Rey through the camera, through the TV box and everything. And you're probably down on your knees now begging for mercy and all that stuff. It was really just evil work by Seth. Big props to Dominik for taking all those shots. But then there was a really peculiar thing at the end of the recap commercial break where Samoa Joe tells Dominik, we're all depending on you. That's a lot of pressure. Coming up next, Andrade versus Dawkins. Before the match, though, Zelina Vega asserts that she had nothing to do with Montez Ford's poisoning last week, in which he apparently drank something funky from the Solo Cup. He passed out once, got up again, wrestled a full match, and then passed out again. It was a delayed release poison, if anything. So anyway, the one thing I thought was amazing was how do they not mention the fact that Bianca Belair, who's got it out for Zelina now, beat Zelina up in the middle of her Twitch stream over the weekend. That's something worth talking about to help flesh out this story, but nope, no mention of that as far as I could tell in this matchup here. It's an alright match. Zelina's on the apron to distract the referee. Bianca Belair does show up and drops her. Dawkins hits the cash in to win the match. Belair chases Vega into the ring for their match, which comes up after the commercial break. Vega gets a little sneaky, kind of using the ref in between the two of them with a cheap shot in Bianca's eye, but Bianca's very powerful with a big military press. I love any time Vega gets an advantage in this match. She just keeps yelling, I didn't do it! I didn't do it! Like she's trying to make her case while she's also getting her heat on Bianca here. Ultimately, she gets dropped though, and Bianca hits the KOD to win the match. There's a post-match interview where Bianca is sure, swears up and down that Zelina actually poisoned Montez, and Dawkins says, Montez isn't going to miss the biggest party of the summer. They want the smoke, etc. So if we are to believe that Zelina did not poison Ford. Because, lately we've seen some storylines here where it's kind of a whodunit, and then it's like either goes one of two ways. It's someone you didn't expect, or it's just kind of like a delay to something you did expect. So either Zelina actually did do it, or she didn't do it, or it's going to turn out, oh, she did do it. So, but if not her though, who did poison Montez? The Ninjas? It's an investigative edition of the VIP Lounge. The Hurt Business are in the ring, and MVP wants to know what's the deal with all the chaos that happened last week on Raw. He even actually accuses Apollo of flickering the lights in their US title match, or being responsible for the lights going in and out during their match. It wasn't Apollo that beat him for the US title last week. It was the lights that beat him. Apollo makes his way out to the ring. And you know what? The more I'm looking at it, the more I'm digging that new US Championship belt. It took me a few weeks to finally warm up to it. MVP says Apollo made a mistake coming out by himself, and Apollo goes, I'm allowed to make bad decisions because I'm a bad man. Oh, snap, son. He ends his promo by saying at SummerSlam, the only lights that'll be going out are MVPs. Shelton and Bobby go after him, but Apollo gets in the ring. MVP goes for a shot, but Crews ends up decking MVP. We go to our match now between Shelton and Apollo Crews. It's an okay match, and then at the end, Apollo gets distracted kicking Lashley on the outside, but he gets hit by Shelton from behind, and there's a roll-up, and he's got him deep with the tights and everything for Benjamin to win. Then after that match, though, Apollo is able, well, first of all, Lashley gets the full Nelson, or he's working on Crews. MVP says, no, you gotta let him go. I want him healthy for my match at SummerSlam. He wasn't healthy for Extreme Rules. I want him to be healthy now. So a bit of leniency, a rare bit of mercy on the part of MVP there. I kind of like that. You could see kind of like the desperation in Apollo's eyes as, you know, he's still like, you know, halfway in the hold and everything. But finally, that moment of weakness comes back to bite MVP because he goes for a cheap shot, but Apollo sees it coming, hits him with the enziguri, and escapes. Except for the part where Apollo didn't win his match, I thought it was actually a pretty good look for Apollo. His pre-match promo, him, you know, getting that final shot at MVP before running off, that was great. But did you have to have him lose the match with Shelton? What harm would it have done for Shelton if he lost clean to Apollo just to get him over more as a threat to MVP? Why does it have to be 50-50 booking? Why is that so hard? Some breaking news as Retribution throws some cinder blocks through the windows of the Performance Center and also flip a car later in the night, and they also are apparently responsible for all the flickering lights throughout the evening. That is still a recurring thing. And like, I don't understand why they think that's like an acceptable thing, because it just makes them look bad when people who don't know what's going on with Retribution come in and see that happening. They have to kind of explain that away every time the lights flicker. It's really annoying. But the whole thing, people were denying, like, no. Some people were actually saying that what we saw with Retribution last week was not directly linked to like the riots across the country and everything. Based on the visuals of the broken windows and the flipped cars, if you're not getting that vibe from them, I really don't know what to tell you. My judgment on like the storyline right now, I'm going to reserve judgment for that because who knows what the end game of this is, you know? Like maybe they're going to take it a different direction or we'll learn more about the members. I don't know, but like I'm not dissing Retribution. I'm just saying that the parallels between them and like any kind of riot stuff is very obvious, and I don't know why people are denying that. Mickie James is back from her knee injury, and she's being interviewed backstage. Good to see her again, as she says that, you know, she's got gold on her mind and her future and everything, when suddenly we hear the dual giggling. In giggle, Lana and Natalya, who are wearing matching outfits. What am I watching at this point? Lana basically is trying to hype Natalya up, how good she is and everything. They call her the best of all time, #boat. Mickie James says, boat sink, ooh, diss. So it gives us a match to look forward to for next week between Mickie and Natalya, but I am just honestly kind of shocked at this transformation here. We saw the seeds being planted between Lana and Natalya a few weeks ago, but I had no idea it was going to manifest into this. And so I feel like maybe Natalya kind of like taking on more, embracing like the reality TV star she's become with Total Divas, and kind of embracing the more vapid nature of that part of the business and everything. It could be a very interesting direction if that's where they're going to go. I mean, as far as how it's going to translate to her in-ring work, who's to say? But I'm really curious about where this is going to go. We'll just see what happens, I guess. We go backstage where we see Ivar talking to a pretty lady, and I gotta say, the opening line of him going, and that's how I dunked the basketball, is probably the greatest just opener like to walk in on for a scene I've ever heard. In come Eric and Cedric Alexander and Ricochet saying, you know, hey, we got a match to get ready for, you gotta get your mind into it. And the lady's like, don't be mad at him. I like him, he's cute. But you, not so much, to Eric, kind of playing that whole gag up again. But Cedric and Ricochet are just, they're reacting reacting way too much to that. We go to that match now. 8-man tag as the Viking Raiders, Cedric and Rico take on Akira Tozawa, and wait, is that Retribution? Oh, no, it's actually just the Ninjas. You'd think they would dress those two groups a little bit differently or have them on different shows. Anyway, it's a really short matchup. The good guys just beat up the Ninjas, who Akira keeps throwing to the wolves. The last Ninja with him wants no part of it, leaves Akira high and dry. The Ninja who takes the Viking experience, some tremendous high on that one. I was very impressed by that. And after the match, though, after the good guys win, Akira is stopped in the ramp by a referee. Surprise roll-up by the Ninja who left him earlier. It's R-Truth in a mask. He is, again, the 24/7 champion, and it never ends, does it? Backstage, Drew McIntyre with yet another solid promo here under his belt. He talks about the reason Orton has, has not helped the younger generation and has been punting the older generation is out of self-preservation. How he took the torch from Mick Foley many years ago and has had a death grip on it ever since, but says that at SummerSlam he will take the torch back from Orton and kick his head off in the process. Charlie Caruso with a follow-up question. What happens if Kevin Owens beats Orton tonight and takes the torch from him? Drew says we'll have to have a chat. So yeah, again, a very solid promo from Drew here. We'll see where that storyline with KO and Orton goes later on. Liv Morgan and Ruby Riott back together, and it feels though as if they are not any higher in the pecking order than they were before they broke up. Either way, Liv is going one-on-one with Peyton Royce here. Peyton and Billie Kay say that the reunion is not going to last. Short and sweet match here. Billie Kay gets on the apron at first to distract. Ruby Riott takes the bait and goes up after her, but the referee only reprimands Ruby, and so Liv's very confused. Why are you distracting the referee, my new, once again, best friend Ruby Riott? But Peyton capitalizes, hits the deja vu, that twisting brainbuster, to win the matchup here, and so more tension between Liv and Ruby. 2/3 of the Riott squad. It's not all sunshine and roses just yet. It's 10 o'clock, which means it's time for the return of RAW Underground. It's part Fight Club, part Def Jam Fight for New York, part Chikara's The Crucible, all entertainment. The first match we see here on the night is Riddick Moss back on the air, back on TV for the first time in a while, beating up Cal Loomis. Cal Loomis had a hard time hearing what Shane McMahon said on the mic there. Moss wins, and then later on we see Arturo Ruas, who had a couple of looks at NXT in the last couple of years, taking on some dude. He beats up a couple of guys, and then we get Daba Kato, the former Babatunde, who made a big impression last week. He starts beating up some fools. Shayna Baszler comes in and wants a piece of the action, and she takes on 3 ladies at once. Well, first back to back to back, then all 3 at once, and looks very strong here at the end, and that's where it ends. So, again, I have to ask, what is all this? What is the meaning of RAW Underground? It has never been explained so far. We don't know why Shane McMahon has come back to start this thing. We don't know, what's really in it for the participants. We don't know what their motives for them fighting are. Is there money involved? Explain some of this world to us. They have just dropped this new world and this new concept into viewers' laps, and we're supposed to instantly give a shit about it, and I just don't see that because we need to know the why of what's happening. Yes, we see what is happening. It is certainly different than the aesthetic we are used to, but why is this happening? There's no explanation of that yet, and I would love, and I know, it sounds impatient, but I think with a concept as different as this, I think the order needed to be, we need to establish what this is and set that world up and then pull the trigger on it, not just drop it here and then try and fill in the backstory later. Asuka takes on Bayley in non-title action, but if she wins, she will take on Sasha Banks for the Raw Women's title at SummerSlam. The lights flicker as the match goes on, everything, and the story here is Sasha and Bayley working on Asuka's knee. It's a great match, though. The match ends, though, with a lot of trading submission attempts, counters upon counters between both ladies. Bayley hits her sunset flip in the corner, does the Kairi Sane kind of plank walk taunt, and then goes for another attack, but she walks right into an armbar, into an Asuka lock. Bayley submits, and so Asuka will now take on Sasha at SummerSlam. Like I said, great match here. Asuka gets her shot. Should be another barn burner here between these two ladies at the pay-per-view. Main event time as Randy Orton takes on Kevin Owens. Very solid match here. Great way to close out the show. In the end, though, after Kevin Owens tries some Viper mockery and goes for the stunner, he ends up eating an RKO instead. Orton wins. Then after the match, Orton tells Ric Flair to stick around because they have something to discuss right after this commercial break. Then after the break, Orton talks about how he should be pissed at Flair because he instigated the whole match with Kevin Owens in the first place. He says, back in 2003, you got me out of a jam. You're the only one who stuck up for me, so I respected you then, but I don't respect you anymore because you are a liability. And one thing he says here that really almost twists the dagger for me is the only reason that you took me under your wing all those years ago is because you thought I could be the son that you never had. And oh God, we were getting dangerously close to name dropping Reed Flair territory here, but they didn't go all the the way with that, though. Orton is lays into Flair, calling him a whore for the spotlight. And then Flair finally comes back and says, he does enjoy the spotlight, but he's proud to be alongside Orton for the ride. Like he says, he describes himself as Charlotte's dad, and he wants to be a part of Orton's success as well. He wants to guide Orton, and he wants Orton to break his championship record. Not John Cena's record, but my record. He gets really emotional and talks about his near-death experience a couple of years ago and how much he loves and respects Randy. The two of them hug it out, but y'all know where this is going. Orton with a low blow and gently cradles Flair down, whispers some sweet evil nothings into his ear, and then he goes to punt Flair, but as he does it, ooh, Retribution with their flickering lights. They got the dimmers just doing this shit with the lights, and so the lights cut to black as he goes to the punch, but you hear the smack, lights come back up, and Flair is conveniently concussed and laid out and everything. And so then the officials come to check on Flair. Drew McIntyre runs in and chases Orton out. The two of them do a lot of just like staring daggers at each other for what feels like 2 solid minutes before we finally cut to black on this show. I thought this was a really strong way to end the show itself. Like I said, we got really dangerously close to the low rent territory, talking about, Reed Flair, kind of like what happened a few years ago when Paige cut a promo on Charlotte about Reed and everything before their championship match and whatnot. But we didn't get that far. But so I think everything, the whole package, I thought was very well done, very emotional work from both Orton and Flair. I think it was just, great stuff. The association with Orton and Flair, I never truly got, but this appears to be how they're going to write that off. And just kind of, Orton gets more evil heat. He is consuming all of the Legends' powers and everything. And it's up to Drew McIntyre to stop him. So, they're really kind of hitting you over the head with it, but I think it's done still in a very good way how evil they've made Orton here in the build for this last couple of months. My grade for this week's Raw is a C+. I think that as far as the things that Raw has to offer for SummerSlam, I think the 3 of the biggest tenets were taken care of and built fairly well. The Seth Rollins, Dominik Mysterio stuff, Asuka versus Sasha through the match with Bayley, and then the main event bit with Orton and Flair, the promo therein and everything, but a lot of other loose ends as well. Like I said, I'm still reserving judgment for Retribution. Don't know, what they ultimately end up doing. Time will tell. RAW Underground needs to find a purpose, and they need to find it soon. And if you're trying to build up a star in Apollo Crews, how hard is it just to have him win consistently? Apparently, Drew McIntyre and Orton are the only 2 people who are allowed to win all the time. But let me know what you thought about Raw this week in the comments section below. How do you feel about SummerSlam as we get closer to that show? Speaking of SummerSlam, all month long, my Wednesday videos are SummerSlam related. Last week was SummerSlam 98 review. This week is my top 8 worst SummerSlam moments, so check that out on Wednesday. But until then, I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.